Emma checked her reflection in the restaurant's window before stepping inside. Her heart thudded in her chest, not from excitement, but from nerves. She hadn't been on a blind date in years, and she wasn't sure why she'd agreed to this one. Maybe it was her best friend's relentless optimism, or maybe it was the loneliness that had started to creep into her quiet evenings. Either way, here she was, smoothing the front of her dress, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The host led her to a corner table where a man sat already waiting. Daniel. He stood as she approached, polite and composed, his smile small but genuine. Emma, he asked, extending his hand. His voice was calm, steady, but there was a hesitation in his tone that made her wonder if he was as uncertain as she was. She nodded, shaking his hand lightly before sitting down. Hi, I hope I'm not late. Right on time, he replied, sitting back down. He gestured to the menu. I ordered some sparkling water for us. I wasn't sure what you liked. It was thoughtful, almost too formal, but it broke the initial tension. Still, the silence that followed was heavy. Emma tried to ignore it, studying him discreetly. He was handsome in a quiet way, broad shoulders, kind eyes, but something about him seemed guarded. His hands rested neatly on the table, fingers interlaced, as if he was holding something back. She asked the usual first date questions: where he worked, what he did for fun, how he knew her friend. His answers were polite, even detailed, but there was a distance behind them. Like he was present, but not entirely there. Each time their eyes met, he'd hold her gaze for a second too long, then look away, lost in some thought he didn't share. Emma tried not to take it personally, but with each minute, her hope dimmed. Maybe he wasn't interested. Maybe he was just being polite. She sipped her water, glancing around the restaurant at couples laughing, talking easily, leaning close. The sound of their voices made the silence at her table even louder. She thought about calling it an early night, making up an excuse about an early meeting, anything to escape the quiet. But when she looked at him again, she caught something fleeting in his expression. A softness, a shadow of sorrow that made her heart pause. He wasn't cold, he was cautious. And that realization, small as it was, stopped her from leaving. Something told her this silence had a story behind it, one she wasn't ready to walk away from just yet. Emma's attempt at small talk drifted into the air, barely catching Daniel's attention. He smiled politely after each question, answering with just enough to be kind, but not enough to truly connect. He spoke about his job at an architectural firm, his passion for sketching old buildings, and his love for early morning coffee. His words were well chosen, his voice warm, but his eyes remained distant, like he was speaking from a place far away. Emma tried again, sharing bits of her own life. I work in publishing, she said, stirring her drink absently. It's not glamorous, but I love words. I think stories can save people in quiet ways. That made him look up for the first time, his brow lifting slightly. Stories, huh? His lips curved into a small, almost nostalgic smile. My daughter loves stories. She insists I tell her one every night before bed. His daughter. The word slipped out so naturally that Emma almost missed it. But when she realized, she smiled, intrigued. How old is she? 5, he said softly, and for a moment, his entire expression changed. His eyes brightened, the tension in his posture eased. It was like mentioning her had brought him back to life. She's everything. Emma's chest warmed at the tenderness in his tone. There it was, the spark she'd been searching for. But as quickly as it appeared, it faded again. His smile faltered, and he lowered his gaze to his plate. It's just been me and her for a while now, he added quietly. Something in the way he said it made Emma's heart ache. She didn't cry, didn't ask what happened. The silence that followed wasn't awkward this time, it was heavy, fragile. She wanted to tell him it was okay, that he didn't have to fill the quiet, but she wasn't sure if she had the right. Their waiter came by, offering menus and a practiced smile. Emma ordered pasta. Daniel went for grilled salmon. The clinking of silverware and the hum of conversations filled the space between them. She tried to think of something light to say, something to lift the weight that had settled over the table, but every word felt too small. She watched him push his food around his plate, lost in thought. There was a quiet sadness about him, the kind that didn't shout, but lingered in the way his shoulders slumped just slightly, or how his fingers fidgeted with the napkin when he thought no one was watching. And yet, Emma couldn't look away. Beneath the silence, beneath the caution, there was warmth, gentle, kind, and aching to be seen. Maybe this wasn't the kind of date filled with laughter or effortless charm. Maybe it was something else, a beginning that required patience. She took a breath, leaned forward, and said softly, "You know, for a silent dinner, this isn't so bad." That made him chuckle, quiet, almost surprised. For the first time all evening, the silence between them felt comfortable. Like a fragile thread was finally starting to form. The quiet between them had finally settled into something almost gentle when the soft chime of the restaurant door broke through. Emma turned instinctively, half expecting another couple or a waiter, but instead saw a small blur of motion, a little girl, barely 5, her curls bouncing as she dashed across the polished floor. She wore a pale pink dress with white sneakers, one lace untied, and a ribbon that had slipped halfway from her hair. "Daddy," she called out, her voice bright and certain, and before Emma could even process what was happening, the girl had flung herself into Daniel's arms. Daniel's entire face transformed. The quiet, reserved man who had barely spoken for the past hour suddenly came alive. His smile was wide, radiant even, as he caught the child and lifted her effortlessly onto his lap. "Hey, sweetheart," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her hair. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to see you," she said simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Then she turned, noticing Emma for the first time. Her wide brown eyes blinked up at her, curious and unguarded. Emma froze for a moment, unsure what to do. She'd never been the kind of person who was instantly comfortable around kids, but there was something about this little girl, something innocent and disarming, that made her heart soften. "Hi there," she said, smiling gently. "You must be Lily." The child nodded, still studying her. "You're pretty," she said matter-of-factly, then looked at her father. "Daddy, she's really pretty." Daniel flushed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Lily, that's very kind, but..." Before he could finish, Lily reached across the table, her small hand stretching toward Emma's. "Are you my new mommy?" The words hung in the air like a fragile secret. The restaurant seemed to fade around them, the soft music, the clinking glasses, the quiet murmur of other diners, all of it melted into silence. Daniel's expression crumbled into shock, his mouth opening but no words coming out. His face turned pale, then pink, and his eyes darted helplessly between Emma and his daughter. Emma's first instinct was to laugh. But the sweetness in Lily's gaze stopped her. The child wasn't teasing or confused, she was completely sincere. Emma felt a lump form in her throat. She reached across the table, her fingers brushing the girl's tiny hand. "Not quite, sweetheart," she said softly, her voice catching with warmth. "But that's a very special question." Lily beamed, completely unaware of the grown-up tension she'd just created. She started chattering about her day, her crayons, her favorite storybook, and the puppy she wanted for her birthday. Daniel listened, mortified but quietly smiling, and Emma found herself laughing for the first time that evening. As Lily's stories tumbled out in bursts of excitement, Emma caught Daniel's gaze. There was apology in his eyes, but also gratitude, an unspoken thank you for not pulling away. In that moment, something shifted between them. The silence that had once felt suffocating now felt safe. It wasn't a wall anymore. It was a bridge, and on the other side was a little girl who had just accidentally opened the door neither of them knew they needed. For a moment, Daniel didn't know where to look. His face was still flushed from Lily's question, his voice caught somewhere between embarrassment and disbelief. "Lily," he managed at last, his tone a soft warning coated with affection. "That's not something you ask on a first meeting." But Lily just giggled, swinging her legs from his lap, completely unbothered by his attempt at correction. "But you always tell me about the lady in your stories," she said brightly. "The one with the kind eyes who helps people and makes you smile." "I thought it was her." Emma's heart gave a small, startled flutter. She turned to Daniel, who looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. His lips parted as if to explain, but no words came. His expression, half sheepish, half caught, was enough to make Emma's cheeks warm. "The lady in your stories, huh?" she teased gently, trying to ease his discomfort. "I'm flattered." Daniel rubbed his temple, laughing under his breath. I swear, I didn't plan this. It's okay, Emma said softly, her smile genuine now. I think she's just honest. Lily looked between them with a wide, hopeful grin. Can I sit next to her, Daddy? Daniel nodded helplessly, and Lily scrambled off his lap, sliding onto the seat beside Emma. Without hesitation, she reached for Emma's hand again, her tiny fingers wrapping around Emma's as if they'd known each other for years. Something inside Emma melted, something she hadn't even realized had been frozen for a long time. They spent the next half hour talking, laughing, and listening to Lily's endless chatter. The girl talked about her favorite cartoons, her cat named Pancake, and how her daddy made the best pancakes, when he doesn't burn them. Daniel groaned at that, and Emma laughed so hard she nearly choked on her drink. For the first time that night, everything felt easy. The awkward pauses had vanished. Daniel wasn't guarded anymore, his voice was relaxed, his smile unrestrained. He watched Emma and Lily with quiet wonder, as though the sight of them together was something out of a dream he hadn't dared to imagine. When the evening finally wound down, Lily had fallen asleep with her head against Daniel's shoulder. Emma helped gather her tiny jacket, and as Daniel paid the bill, he turned to her with a hesitant smile. I'm so sorry about all of that, he said softly. She's curious, and maybe a little too honest. Emma shook her head, her eyes lingering on the sleeping child. Don't apologize, she's wonderful, and she made tonight better than I expected. He looked at her for a long moment, something unspoken shimmering between them, something that felt like hope. Maybe we could try again, he asked, without the awkward silence this time. Emma smiled, warmth filling her chest. Only if Lily gets to pick the dessert next time. Daniel chuckled quietly, glancing at his daughter, then back at her. Deal. As they walked out into the cool night, Emma realized she wasn't thinking about how awkward the evening had been anymore. She was thinking about a little girl's hand in hers, and a man whose quiet heart had just started to open again. The blind date she nearly regretted had turned into something far more unexpected, a beginning she hadn't known she'd been waiting for.